From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're going to start today. First of all, welcome to the 2 p.m. session of the Kern County Board of Supervisors, Tuesday, June 20th, 2017. I will ask County Counsel Mark Nations to report on any actions taken in closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board met in closed session on all of the items listed in the morning's agenda 50 through 55, and there are no reportable actions taken in any of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nations. So now we will consider the consent agenda. If you'd like to follow along with our agendas today, they are available at the tables next to the exits. And we are going to consider the consent agenda. All items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item or items on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken on the consent agenda. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So at this time, I will read the consent agenda items. Starting on page 2, item 3 is on consent. On page 3, items 4 and 5, both on consent. On page 4, all items 6 through 10 are on consent. On page 5, items 11 through 14 are on consent. On page 6, all items 15 through 17 are on consent. Page 7, all items 18 through 20 are on consent. Page 8, all items 21 through 23 are on consent. On page 9, items 24 through 28 are on consent. And on page 10, items 34 through 38 are on consent. On page 11, all items 39 through 45 are on consent. And finally, on page 12, all items 46 through 50 are on consent. Are there any members of the audience who would like to make a comment on the consent agenda items? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board and ask if a board member would like to remove an item, or I would request a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion. Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now we go back to page 2 on the agenda. Item number 1, public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Are there any members of the audience that would like to make a public presentation? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on then and to item number 2, which is board member announcements or reports. Any reports or announcements from the board? No? Okay, then we'll move on to the first item of business that is not on the consent agenda, and that will be item number 29. That's on page 9. This is an item under the County Administrative Office. Public hearing to consider possible election of the County of Kern to become a groundwater sustainability agency for portions of the Kern County subbasin, subject to notice filed by the Coelho-Kern Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And I will turn to the County Administrative Officer, Ryan Alsop. I see that you have Mr. Christensen with you as well, so who will start us off today?
Mr. Christensen, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Alan Christensen from the CEO's office. This item was, your board held a hearing 2 weeks ago on June 6th to consider, to receive public comment and consider election of the County of Kern to become a groundwater sustainability agency, or a GSA, for portions of the Kern County subbasin, which were subject to notices filed by the Kern Groundwater Sustainability Agency. That filing was to the Department of Water Resources at the state. You continued the hearing to this date. At that time, there were some concerns voiced by some individuals in some areas of this Kern area. If I can refer to the map, the concept here was that the blue area, that's the Coelho Water District, would join together and you have executed a joint powers authority agreement for this entire area, both the pink and the blue. So we would join the blue area in Coelho with the white, so-called white area, in this case it's pink, together for one GSA. At that meeting, at that hearing, the property owners in the pink area now here, we refer to them as white area at the state level, had some concerns about that arrangement, and so there were many questions, and so staff went back and tried to meet with those folks. So we had some communications. We also met with the Coelho board to address those concerns. We had developed a list of what we thought to-dos that we could work on, and we're going to move forward. We probably weren't able to change anything before June 30th, which is our deadline to submit to the state the GSA application, but we were prepared to work on those things even after June 30th and try to resolve concerns. And then right after that meeting that we had a conference call with many of the property owners, including I think a few that are here today. The Coelho board met, and Coelho determined that they would rather not have the perception that they were forcing anyone into an arrangement. So they decided that they would file for the blue area with the state, and that they would ask the county to take care of this pink area. And so that is where we're at right now. Coelho has filed. And their intention is to that be the sole GSA for the blue area. So that leaves that pink area in question. And so the purpose of the hearing today is for hearing for the public to comment on the county filing for a GSA for that area. Now, I don't have a bigger map, but we have a bigger map of the entire subbasin, which the county is responsible or has taken responsibility for the so-called white area, the undistricted area of the basin. And this area was in that larger white area. Now it will go back into the Kern Groundwater Authority, under the purview of the Kern Groundwater Authority and the county's responsibility to politically represent the white areas. So again, with the action today, you will be receiving public comment, but our intent is to file for this area to be a GSA, and then that will be folded into the bigger, larger white area, 500,000 acres in the Kern County subbasin, and it will be managed in that way. So it is our recommendation that your board open the public hearing, receive comment, consider the county's possible election to become a groundwater sustainability agency for areas of the Kern County subbasin east of Coelho Water District, which are shown on the modified map. After comments have been received, it's recommended that your board close the public hearing, make the finding the project is exempt from further CEQA review of state CEQA guidelines, approve and adopt a modified resolution. I think you have a copy of that modified resolution before you, electing to file as a GSA, file and GSA notice for the portions of the basin that are subject to this hearing. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Hopefully that was clear as mud.
It was indeed. Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Are there any questions or comments from the board before I go to the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask if there are any members of the audience who would like to make any comment on this item. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name's Chad Hathaway. I'm a landowner in, well, we did call it the white areas. It's the pink areas, I guess, now. Pink's a cooler color anyways. So just for some background real quick, I'm a landowner in this area. I'm a farmer in this area. I'm also an oil producer in this area. And about December of 2015, January of 2016, looking at the sub-basin maps, a large conglomerate of landowners in those areas, cattle ranchers, oil producers, active farmers, people that were in non-districted areas started getting together in these wide area meetings. And so I think, you know, the whole purpose of getting together was trying to be proactive, be part of this process, and also trying to establish some form of pseudo-governance or people that can express. We had dairy people, we had large-scale farmers, we had oil producers, and this group continued to get together. Alan started to join us also as well later on. But I think the root message or the underlying message for the majority of us is that whatever is done with these areas, and we appreciate the county moving forward and adopting this. Really, the Coelho thing could have been great, but I think the lack of communication and over a period of several months that was going on was kind of the breakdown in that. I think anytime you're a stakeholder in an area and you have such a short window of time to do something, it's very difficult to grasp that and to get understanding. But getting back to what I'm trying to impress to you today is that I think most of the people that live and work and produce in these areas just want to have a say in the governance and want to be a part of that process. And I think that's going to be important going forward. So with your consideration going forward, I hope you keep that in the back of your mind. So thank you for all you do, and hopefully we can get this solved and get into compliance and get a good, creative, entrepreneurial GSP put together for these areas, because there's a lot of opportunity in these white areas, pink areas, whatever you want to call it. I think there's a myriad of different water options that if we work hard at this with some good leadership, we can really establish an area that's still continues to thrive, and we're still going to be in business in the farming business at least 40 years from now. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Any other public comments? Good afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mike Turnip, seat representing Kern Tax. One question for Alan is, as far as surface issues, are you, in the past, you talked about working with the districts on surface issues only for you represent the county, not in the districts. Are you still going to be involved at Coelho like you were with the other districts with surface issues? Or does this point, I understood over the past you had there was concern about land use and how it was developed and those type of things. Did the county still maintain all of their rights with Coelho, or did that just go away with the joint powers agreement?
Through the chair?
Please, please respond.
Yes, part of the MOU that is before, that is going to be adopted, you'll see in the next item, that we reiterate is that our land use powers are not affected. So that includes everywhere in the county.
I understand.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure now you broke the agreement. I want to make sure that, I guess I didn't read far enough down on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tremsey. Any other members of the public that would like to make comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board. Supervisor Couch.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Okay. Supervisor Gleason.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I got a couple questions. Mr. Hathaway, could you come back up, please? I have a question for you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your words. Appreciate it. I understand the situation. My understanding with the water meeting, I went to one of these white district water meetings of the Farm Bureau several months ago, and we had a conversation about costs and liabilities. Do you remember that conversation at all? Do you, let me characterize it and tell me what you think. I thought I heard people talk that the county would be reimbursed, or the costs incurred by GSA development and by implementation of GSP would be covered by the people who live in those white areas.
Well, I'm by no means a water expert. I'm in the oil and gas business primarily, but I believe that requires a Prop 218 action, where you would go out and assess people. I mean, Alan, we've encouraged that to happen. I think that allows for different mechanisms of assessments to do that. I think a majority of the people that I can't speak for everybody, but I know a lot of people that I do talk to are more than willing to be assessed to cover things like that. I know I am. I can speak for myself that if we know that there's a very active, distinct plan or message moving forward to get this done, I don't think assessment is something that any of us would argue with, especially under these circumstances.
So if we vote to be a GSA for that area, that means definitely that our first responsibility will be to create a GSP, a specific plan for that area, so there will be a plan.
Correct, as part of Sigma, correct.
Mr. Hall, could you please offer some comments about costs and ways of paying costs and managing costs and developing a GSA and a GSP and all those other things, other than a 218?
Right now, Sigma is written so that there is one provision in there, I think it's 10730, maybe it's 730.2, which says pre-GSP costs, that's the costs to get your GSP written, are not subject to 218. Whether or not that will hold legal muster is an open question. There is now a case at the California Supreme Court on 218 and its application. Your board authorized, and we have sent an amicus brief seeking clarification that 218 does not apply to this stage of GSP, but we won't have that for a while. Stepping aside from that section, you're then going to get into assessments, and really they're actually more of a rate. Assessment is a Section 4 item under 218. Section 6 is rates. Rates are going to be like a pump tax. Those would be a majority protest under 218, and the real complication there is finding out at this stage who is pumping and how much they're pumping, because right now most wells do not have a meter on them. So you've got a legal mechanism issue that can be worked out, and then you've got a factual base that you have to throw into the calculation, which will be difficult without meters.
So pre-GSP, what I heard you say is that 218 does not apply.
Per a statute. Whether or not that statute will survive the light of day is an open question, because 218 is a constitutional issue.
In your experience, what are the costs going to be associated with this GSA pre-GSP? Just give me I'm not going to hold you to it, but I mean, $10, 500,000, 1.5 mil, how much?
Closer to $1 million plus, depending. And I mean, it depends on how many people are putting money in, and what area you're really talking about. I think on the east side, we just saw 1.5 million. Alan might be closer on one estimate from a contractor who's trying to do that GSP.
Thank you. Mr. Alsop, how much money have we set aside for creating a GSP for this particular area?
I don't have that answer, Supervisor, but I can get it for you.
I think the answer is zero. How much money have we set aside, budgeted for development of a GSA?
I don't know that it's zero.
It might be more than zero.
How much more than zero?
I don't have that number either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll
okay.
get it for you.
The numbers aren't exactly, I'm trying to get across an idea. We're going to have costs. We're not prepared for these costs. I think it's fair to say that we're not prepared for these costs. 218 is part of the answer, but not the complete answer.
Okay.
And what I hear you say is you're expecting a good leadership and all great plan, all this kind of stuff. We have no money. So how are we going to manage that?
Well, you've got 474,000 acres in the white areas. Something has to be done. And that's something that we talked a little bit about this several months ago when we circulated around, that leadership has to be established in this, and we have to find a mechanism. If it's a self-assessment, somebody needs to propose that to us. What's the worst that can happen? So there's about 32,000 acres plus or minus of irrigated lands in this district. There's multitudes of different people that are affected by this. I just think that some kind of action, some proactive action has to be done. I mean, this Coelho potential expansion only affected a small part of the white areas. I mean, there's still a large, vast amount of land out there that's in these white areas. I mean, take 474,000 acres or whatever it is now after the minor annexations that occurred. I mean, an assessment of $1 or $2 an acre is something that, I mean, as a guy that owns cattle land that has cattle leases, 2 acre assessment, That's a $2 acre assessment. Yeah, that's a lot of money on a 1,000-acre deal that I'm only getting $13 an acre on. But, you know, for a one-time setup of a GSA, I don't think it's clear on what it would cost. I think different water districts have different impacts, so I'm not sure what the total costs are, but there has to be some sort of entrepreneurial avenues that the county could possibly take moving forward. And yeah, I think that requires leadership from your board.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate his comments about leadership. I also appreciate that there are costs associated with that leadership and that have not been identified, and you cannot create something out of thin air. I'm not going to not support this effort, but I cautiously move in this direction because of opportunities past, and we're at a point where we have little choice, in my opinion. I'd be very interested in understanding the costs associated with this. I'd be very interested in understanding the liabilities associated with this. I heard, Mr. Hall, you mentioned something about creating a water district in that area. Could you amplify those comments?
Sure. One option that landowners in the white areas, shall we say, whether they be in this now pink area for our map purposes or the larger white area, one thing that they could consider and frankly maybe should be considering is starting to form water districts for themselves. Because at the end of the day, the solution is not cutbacks, it's importation, and you need a structure that can bring water in for your area. And with such a large, vast area, if you're set a water bank up in the north corner of the county, it's going to be difficult for somebody who's in a white area in the south part of the county to rely on water put in that water bank because of operational and hydrological concerns, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I'm done. Thanks.
Thanks. Mr. Hathaway, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just want to kind of respond to that comment.
Come on up.
So a large portion of us at the very beginning of this, because of the timeline, went to surrounding districts around us, Coelho, some other districts, and really there was no interest in bringing us in at that time. So we did approach that route at the very beginning. That was the first thing we wanted to do. That's when we went back to the county and said, hey, there's not a lot of interest here. We're going to have to, and we sought out legal counsel. At that time, we all pooled and paid for legal counsel at that time to get that advice and say, look, what's our best option? Best option be, number one, go to a water district, form a muni, go through all these different options. That wasn't plausible in the time frame that we had. That's why we went around and said, hey guys, we have to do something about this. And so that's been done. So we're here, and that's where we're at now. I just wanted to respond to that comment. Thank you.
So, Mr. Hathaway, let me ask you a question. So, would you look now to the county to have discussions with the white area landowners and try and facilitate, if in fact moving in the direction of creating a water district or a series of water districts was the best option for that to occur?
I'm just one person
now.
I think that would be a great step in the right direction. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other members of the public that would like to make comment? Okay, seeing none, we had a motion to approve staff's recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, now I am going to have to ask a question of clarification for staff. Originally, we were going to hear. We have items, let me back up. We have items 30, 31, 32, and 33. These items are related, and I believe at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Hall, staff is requesting that we hear 31 and 32 concurrently, the items that deal with the MOU, and then 30 and 32 after that. What did I say? I'm sorry, I meant to say 31 and 33. The two items that deal with the MOUs. Is that how you want to start, Mr. Hall?
That would be the proper way to do it, Chair. If we agree to the MOUs, at the end of the day, you might not want to even consider filing for GSAs for these areas. The items are on here in case we didn't come to an agreement on MOUs. We have done that, and unfortunately, it was not in time to sort of shortcut this process and not have the hearing. But if agreeing to the MOUs should be the first option, and then move on to the public hearings, and whether or not you wish to have those or hold those is something we can address when we get to those items.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hall. Okay, so we're going to hear items 31 and 32 concurrently. However, we will vote on them separately. So who's going to start us off? Is that Mr. Christensen? Okay, Mr. Christensen, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to approve a memorandum of understanding with Henry Miller Water District to define their participation, or the county's participation in a groundwater sustainability agency, or GSA, subject to a notice filed by Henry Miller Water District to the Department of Water Resources and period. There we go. Okay. A memorandum of understanding has been agreed to by the two agencies. In fact, up till today, there was some minor changes in language to that MOU. I think you should have a, okay, here we go. We have it now. We have a modified copy of the MOU. Thanks. No, just for Henry Miller. Just for Henry Miller. Thank
Okay.
you. The primary change to the MOU, and we have a representative from Henry Miller here today, the primary change has to do with water transfers, and there was some exchange of language, and we have landed on the language that is before you in this updated or modified MOU in item F. So item F, water transfers, and I think the county and Henry Miller are agreeable to that. The MOU, as Mr. Turnipseed had mentioned, land use authority, that's one of the things that is guaranteed in this MOU, along with other things, protecting the oil industry, oil and gas, maintaining well permitting authority to the county, and as I mentioned, water transfers as well. It's recommended that your board approve a modified memorandum of understanding with Henry Miller Water District to define the county's participation in a GSA, which has been subject to notice filed by the Henry Miller Water District. And with that recommendation, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Are there any questions from the board before I go to the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll open this up. Are there any members of the audience that would like to make comment?
Good afternoon. My name is Isaac St. Lawrence on behalf of Henry Miller Water District. Just wanted to briefly say thank you to staff who was working diligently on this matter, and we were able to come to an agreement on this MOU really this morning. So we've been working diligently on it and wanted to thank staff and the County Board of Supervisors for listening to our concerns. Thank you.
Could you repeat your last name, sir?
St. Lawrence, ST period, LAWRENCE. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we will first we'll consider item 31.
Motion on 31.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a similar agreement, memorandum of understanding with Semi-Tropic Water Storage District to define the county's participation in a GSA. Much of the same language that was contained in the Henry Miller MOU is also contained in the Semi-Tropic agreement. So I will not. All that information is available to you in your packet. I will not go over that, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. Our recommendation is that your board approve the memorandum of understanding with Semi-Tropic Water Storage District to define county's participation in a GSA, which has been subject to notice filed by Semi-Tropic Water Storage District. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. So I'll ask if there are any members of the audience who would like to make comment on item 33, the MOU with Semi-Tropic Water Storage District. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Board of Supervisors. My name is Jason Gianquinto, General Manager of Semi-Tropic. So it's been a pleasure working with staff and with Alan and the team to get the MOU done. I think we're very comfortable with the MOU. I do have one point of clarification on the memorandum that's covered to it. It's basically said Semi-Tropic and the county will provide mechanisms for transfer. I think it should be should. I think we all support transfers. But I think it's a little early to predetermine that as we go through the GSP process. So the MOU is fine. We're very comfortable with it. And so just one clarification on the actual memorandum.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a response from staff?
Sure.
Mr. Hall?
Chairman.
I think your mic's off.
Are we good to go? Okay. Chairman, we've used the language that's in this agreement with Semi-Tropic. It actually has some provisions in it that if there's material harm, that transfers wouldn't occur. The language in the Semi-Tropic agreement is what we've used with several other water districts. I think we're at 6 or 7 in county that have all agreed to that specific language. The agreement you'll find in Henry Miller is actually even more conducive to transfers. It doesn't have the material harm aspects. The language that was drafted is drafted for two purposes. First, the purpose goes back to what we had discussed over a year ago when we first started dealing with GSAs and filing overlapping GSAs. And that was that there's an unusual provision in SGMA that would allow somebody to form a small GSA and therefore keep the native groundwater allocations in that GSA within that small area. That's simply really not workable. It's not the way you can do an administrative adjudication of a basin. Somebody who's got a small piece of parcel in one GSA that can't economically farm that parcel needs to be able to take that allocation and combine it with other allocations for other property they own to come up with something that they can use. That's the whole purpose behind the language. We've drafted the language in a manner that does recognize that as we move forward 2 years from now and we start getting data, there could be reasons why you wouldn't want one particular transfer to happen. It might create a well depression in some area. It might be varying grades of water quality. You might have something that's a little more brackish in one area than another. Those issues are contemplated, and we expect those to be worked out in the GSP. But at the end of the day, what the language says is no GSA in Kern County will be able to say, we've got a locked water market, and it's locked to this GSA. That was the purpose of the language.
Okay. Mr. Gianquinto, do you have any?
No, and I agree with those comments. It's just there was a point. Item number 3 in the memorandum basically says the Semi-Tropic and the county agree that transfers of native groundwater allocations will be allowed within the basin and not limited. But the language in the MOU is consistent with that discussion that Mr. Hall just provided. So,
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
there's a staff memorandum.
Oh, the staff
Yeah,
member,
just-
okay.
that's
Yeah.
all.
The MOU.
The
will
MOU is
control.
fine, correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry about that.
There's just a discrepancy.
Oh,
between the
thank
two.
you. Thanks for that.
Okay,
I think we all get it.
all right, thanks.
Great. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Any other comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board.
Motion on staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Okay, so we still have items 30 and 32 to consider. So Mr. Hall or Mr. Christensen, how should we proceed?
I'm getting the finger pointed over this way, so I'll
Okay.
take off.
Thank you.
These two items are a hearing. They're a hearing to form, to elect to be a GSA for the area of Henry Miller and Semi-Tropic. The reason they're put on the agenda is we don't have a fully executed MOU. You just approved one. So we don't have a fully executed MOU, which we've been using to then cure overlaps. We are on a 10-day clock, so whether or not Semi-Tropic and Henry Miller can get the document completely executed before June 30th is somewhat of an open question. We also had the issue of, I think we finally agreed on Semi-Tropic's MOU, got agreement from the district on Wednesday night, and we got agreement from Henry Miller 2 hours ago. So those items were on there also as to protect us if we didn't have an MOU agreement. With that said, I don't know if you want to go forward with these hearings or go forward with any filing, knowing that I think we can trust these districts to execute the MOUs they've both agreed to execute with us.
Okay, well, let me ask this question. If we approve, we hold the hearings, we approve 30 and 32, and they do execute the MOUs, are these then, items then moot, and we revert back to the MOUs that we approved a few minutes ago?
Yes, if they execute, we wouldn't even file, we wouldn't make these filings.
Okay, so is your recommendation then for us to move forward with these approval as a insurance, so to speak, in case something happens in their execution of the MOUs?
I'm confident that they will execute the MOUs, but as a last-ditch insurance, that could be something you want to consider.
Okay, so I'll return to the board and ask the board members. My thought is we move forward, and then if they execute them, then these are,
Motion to that effect.
okay.
Second.
So first we have to have the hearing. So we'll go ahead and first I'll consider item 30. So Mr. Christensen, are you starting us off on this, or Mr. Hall, would you like to do it?
I think Alan should.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Christensen, please.
Item number 30. Got to make sure I've got the right one. Okay, this is a public hearing to receive comment and consider a possible election by the County of Kern to become a GSA for portions of the Kern County subbasin, which are subject to notice filed by Henry Miller Water District. Because the county's jurisdiction overlies the Kern County groundwater subbasin, it can become a GSA for any portion of the subbasin in which it has jurisdiction, preferably in cooperation with other eligible agencies. Upon approval, the resolution by the Board of Supervisors of the county will file a notice with the Department of Water Resources to be a GSA over the territory of Henry Miller Water District. That is, unless the MOUs in question are executed before June 30th. So it's our recommendation that you open the public hearing, receive comment, and consider the county's possible election to be a GSA for the portion of the Kern County subbasin subject to notice filed by Henry Miller Water District. After comments have been received, it's recommended you close the public hearing, make finding that the project is exempt from further CEQA review, approve and adopt the resolution electing to file to be a GSA for portions of the basin. That concludes my comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Christensen. I'll ask the board just to make sure that everyone is understanding what we're doing. Any questions? Okay, then I'll open the public hearing. Are there any members of the audience who'd like to make comment on items 30 or 32? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board and request a motion first on item 30.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve staff's recommendation. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved, all ayes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. And now item 32. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second again.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved, all ayes.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen, Mr. Hall. Thank you for your work on these items, and thank you for those representatives from the two districts that were here today. That brings us to the conclusion of our business for the PM session, and so I would entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, June 27th at 9 a.m.
So moved.
We are adjourned.